Today is Victory in Europe Day.
Just as I have a dream.
A salute from Mr. Nelson Mandela.
And Mrs. Thatcher.
Hello and welcome to Systems Reimagined, Episode 7. Today I'm joined by Samuel and Rachel once more to break down some of the biggest news stories of the past couple weeks at this point. We're going to start off with a little bit more of a focus on domestically in the UK. So we're going to discuss some updates with the Oxford vaccination, then discuss the UK's new measures to implement hotel quarantines, and also their interesting punishment for not abiding by the rules. Then we're going to discuss some NHS reforms which have been leaked recently, the HS2 plans, and then also a BLM and Extinction Rebellion article released by Telegraph, which at least myself I found extremely hilarious. So it would be interesting to unpack that as well. Finally, we'll go to some Grenfell updates, and that kind of ends it off domestically. And then internationally, we're going to do our analysis of the whole Gamestop event. We're a bit late to it, but it's probably better to have a bit of external perspective on it now that it's all said and done. And then finally, we're going to discuss some updates with regards to Joe Biden. So again, like and subscribe if you are enjoying our content over here. With that being said, I guess we'll get into some of the vaccine updates. So the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine has now officially been recommended for all adults. So this is following an update, or I guess following some news that some older people were essentially having some bad reactions to getting the vaccine, and even some countries advising against administering it to old people. And this is also, so that's basically essentially a big story here. The WHO has said that it protects against, I think, almost every variant apart from the South African variant. There's a bit of mixed reviews on that. So the BBC stated that it showed minimal protection against mild and moderate cases in young people. But the WHO's director of immunization said it was possible for the vaccine to prevent severe disease, essentially. So I guess kind of the way I look at this whole situation is, first of all, it's probably better, even if it's not completely confirmed yet, if it protects, more of the severe cases, I would say just offering some protection would probably be really good. And also, if you don't have the South African variant in your borders, then you should administer the vaccine, because if it works on every other strain, then might as well do it. So what are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's quite interesting because out of a few vaccines, it has got slightly more kind of like limited efficacy. Obviously, it's good to have like yet another alternative, and I think it really coincides nicely with the government's overarching plan of vaccinating all adults. They're now saying by June, which it was the autumn. So obviously that's only really a positive thing if these kind of vaccine targets are being met and exceeded. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one to see the kind of more rapid increase in different vaccines getting approval. But I'm not sure, just in terms of a few more of the reports I've read, like with some of those variants, because it's quite difficult as well to tell like what specific variant someone may have at the time, and the kind of like spreading of those. But I guess that links into what we're going to talk about later with quarantine hotels and things, and it's quite a nice segue in that hopefully with the kind of wider rollout of those, it will be easier for the government to control these different variants coming into the country, and then use this new Oxford vaccine kind of for wider use.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what you guys are saying, I think it is actually a positive, like throughout this whole crisis, I think it's really been a positive development in how and shows the possibilities of how we can quickly develop and deploy vaccines. I mean, I think if we put our resources to it, the possibilities are endless in dealing with multiple sicknesses and illnesses. So I think that's a positive. It's a very positive thing throughout these months. Regarding the Oxford and AstraZeneca vaccine, I think it's good, but I'm a bit worried about the South African variant to some degree. Maybe not as much as what I've seen on the news and stuff, because in South Africa they were doing some testing, and I think it was 22% effective on mild cases, but I think it was quite effective on serious cases. So while I understand the hesitancy, because there is quite a low rate on the mild ones, I do think it's overall positive, even for the South African variant, because perhaps like that can be deployed for like young people, for example, who they don't need as much protection for like mild cases because they deal with their body. They're, generally more healthier, and less risk. So yeah, I just think it's positive overall. And just as we mentioned before, how fast we've deployed this vaccine to the public has been exceptional here in the UK. And you got to give your credit where it's due.
Yeah.
That's
what I will say. I was speaking to a friend actually about this the other day, and I was like, we're speaking about Brexit essentially, and like the whole vaccine rollout in the UK is some pretty good PR for the whole Brexit move, to be honest. Looking at, obviously, just economically, Brexit obviously is going to cost a lot of money for the UK and things like that, and like we mustn't downplay that at all, because that's like a really, it's gonna be a really harsh reality for many people. But like the idea of what Boris Johnson and stuff, I feel like was really trying to hammer home, especially in the Brexit talks. Oh, like we're sovereign, we can do all these kinds of things. He's it's showing, I guess, in this way with the vaccine rollout, whereas it's like he can basically stick up like a fat middle finger to the EU and be like, oh look, we don't need you, we're just out here vaccinating like 15% of our population, like you bureaucratic cucks, like that's like, I feel like that's what it's good PR for Brexit essentially.
Yeah, I agree. I think certainly it helps publicity, because equally it could have like very, very easily have gone the other way in terms of if there had been like a better, more coherent approach from the member states. I think that's kind of what everyone assumed would happen. But obviously you've seen like a lot of French citizens just completely against the vaccine, not wanting it. You've seen the German government actually start vaccination clinics and processes before the EU have officially given the go-ahead. So it really has been quite chaotic. So in comparison, the UK, for sure, it's been very good publicly, and in terms of publicity there. But I'm hesitant to kind of say that it is laying the foreground for the rest of like post EU life.
Not at all.
Good start. I know that's not what you're saying, but I think a lot of pundits are kind of marking this as like the first victory in many. Now we're like free from these EU shackles, and I just don't think that's the case. If you kind of think about it logically, it is going to be better on a smaller scale, where you already have one of the vaccines that's kind of like being rolled out on a mass scale, is produced within that nation state. So
it's so weird. I feel like there's, with the whole Brexit stuff, there's almost like a fetishization, is that a word, of like the whole like, oh, we're independent, all this kind of stuff, and it's like it's building on like, I guess, sentiments of nationalism in some sense, but then that's completely blinding you from what like a lot of the economic reality is of Brexit. Like this study done by LSE showed that Brexit's going to be 2 to 3 times more expensive than the COVID cost, and right now everyone's having like a panic attack about the COVID cost. And COVID will cost a lot of money, but like this is a thing we could have avoided, and so I guess that was a bit of a random digression.
It is like a positive for the conservative government, because this thing in particular is I think it's very useful to be sovereign, because there's less people to cover, less people to deal with and distribute these vaccines. So I think this is a perfect way for it's like PR, so it does help them, and give off a good image. And I'm not a EU purist, obviously I think it's probably more positives than negatives. But I mean, there are some cases where I feel like, being more sovereign is a good thing. I mean, I don't trust Boris Johnson in doing anything good with some more sovereignty, but I mean, who knows, But under this government, I don't see it, improving like in comparison to being in the EU. But yeah, I mean,
Should we go into the jails and stuff now? Sorry, not the jails. I'm saying the hotels and things, but I guess it links into jails. So yeah, I guess following this whole vaccine talk, so the government decided to implement a hotel quarantine, which is good. Happy about it. So you need to quarantine for 10 days and pay £1,750 per day, if I'm not mistaken. Like the idea that you have to pay for your hotel and stuff as well isn't like super extreme. It's pretty commonplace in terms of if you look at New Zealand, Australia, I believe also have that system. But the thing that I guess was kind of the headline of the whole story, I guess, was the idea that if you provide false information on your passenger locator form, you could be fined up to £10,000 or jailed for 10 years or both. And also, if you break the quarantine in the hotel, you could have a penalty of £10,000. And so I just thought that was like, it's like first of all, I just found it interesting, the whole idea that like it is now that we're doing this whole thing. Like, I mean, I don't want to play like the what if game, but I guess I am. Like, if we did this right at the beginning, this could have been pretty good, right? Like a pretty good thing, I support it. And then what I'd also say is that, if I'm not mistaken, so it's countries, you have to isolate from countries which are on like the red list, right? So I think it's 32 countries, maybe a little bit more than that. But like the kinds of countries which are on it is not always the countries which have the highest, cases, for example. And yeah, like I saw a tweet, and I'll put up on screen now, which is essentially just highlighting that. And yeah, just in terms of like how the public essentially react to this. So a YouGov poll showed that 50% of people thought that facing up to 10 years in jail was about right, like as a punishment for that action, and then 32% thought it was too harsh, which I guess also interesting. And then I think it was about 15% thought that it was like you could do more about it, like you have to go further than that. Which I thought was interesting. Like personally, I would think that it would be a lower amount than that, but yeah, I guess not. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, those numbers are very surprising. I mean, I fall into the camp that it's very harsh. I mean, I think, in my view, it's kind of overcompensating for how they've dealt with it so far, just to to make them look more authoritative and strong, like a strong man. And yeah, and I think it's just to overcompensate for how they've dealt with it. And it's crazy, like 10 years, up to 10 years is like, it's nuts.
It's a long time. Yeah, I know.
And I don't know if it's going to be a false promise. I don't know if they're actually going to go through with actually handing out 10 years to someone if they do break it. But yeah, I just thought it was bizarre. And I'm surprised that there's that much support for it, to be honest.
I mean, I don't know what the YouGov sample size and stuff was of it, but that's what, at least I saw like on the Twitter account, they tweeted out the poll. So yeah. Also, I mean, polls aren't exactly the most reliable data source, but it gives an indication.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined though to think that it would be quite accurate, because there seems to be this like prevailing kind of narrative that has been pushed by the government, because obviously it really helps them, in that it's not necessarily people kind of that are in the UK that are breaking the rules. Obviously, like attention's been drawn to the odd kind of like wedding or rave or whatever, but it's people coming in, and it like feeds back again into that like Brexit kind of island narrative as well, that these variants are, they're coming over here from somewhere else. So in a way, I'm not that surprised if like certainly a kind of sizable majority of the public are thinking that these things aren't too harsh, when obviously they really are. I agree with Samuel in that I think they're just very much trying to kind of backtrack without publicly doing so, in terms of the fact that we've seen like New Zealand, Canada, they've had these quarantine hotels since like March time, and that's the reason why they're now kind of like declaring themselves as COVID free. So I think it is a good idea. Obviously it's difficult if people don't have the financial means to do so. I guess you could kind of group that with, more often than not, if they have the financial means to kind of travel by air travel, then they will also have the disposable income to spend on one of these quarantine facilities. But there are some kind of very legitimate and noticeable exceptions. I'm not sure. I think Labour have kind of highlighted how some kind of economic support should be made for those people, but obviously that's not really at the forefront of the government's narrative right now with this. It's just kind of like, it's something that will get done and it will be very effective, even if it's 8 months late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking. Sorry, wait. Sad, you want to go?
No, go. It's fine.
No, like yeah, I don't know. Labor, I feel like Labor just right now, recently, with the whole vaccine rollout, has just, like, looking at PMQs, I just feel like they are just irrelevant right now. It's so frustrating to see.
If you look at the
Like,
looking at the polling right now for Labour, they like the gap is
so
crazy.
bad. Yeah, I mean, look, obviously it makes sense that there's no, like, the idea that the Conservatives have like increased their more people want to vote for Conservatives right now than, a couple months ago. Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and that's something which we all would expect because vaccines being rolled out, and people are like, their grandparents aren't
But even
dying,
bef-
right? So that's great.
But even before that,
No, yeah, yeah. No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying, but the idea that it was like essentially level this whole time, and then now like the Conservatives have like a 5 point lead, I think it is, or 6 point lead or something, is unreal. Like, I don't even know, did Labour even have a 5 or 6 point lead at the worst times in the pandemic?
I
No.
think they were only ever maybe 3, like on a good day.
Yeah, it's like unreal. Like, how, like, people want to talk about like, it's like, I guess if people want to talk about how, it's, I feel like kind of the you need to unite the people and like unite different ideologies, try to get more voters from the other side onto your camp and stuff like that. But like, Keir Starmer's is just not doing a good job of that, if that's his like main aim, like he, I just, yeah, I really don't see him being like an effective leader if that's like his whole, persona in the Labour Party.
yeah, I mean that just goes back to what we've been talking about for these past few episodes. Like, Keir Starmer ultimately doesn't have much to say, not much to offer. He just tries to say the opposite to Boris Johnson, but he never presents his own plan. And I think that's made people not dubious about him. And plus, combined with the new vaccine successful rollout, yeah, it's not looking good for Labour right now. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I like this week's PMQs was like embarrassing for him. Like, the idea that he ran on a platform of being a radical agenda is like so far gone from what he is actually has like like, I mean, what his time in Labour Party leader was. Like, he was like, his in the PMQs, like, Boris Johnson was literally making a joke out of him about how he was like, oh, here's someone's like, oh, I'm pro business, all this kind of stuff, right? And then Boris Johnson was like just literally roasting him the whole time because, yeah, like, if you are a Labour leader, I would say genuinely you are a little bit skeptical of businesses and their practices. Like, that kind of is inherent in like a lot of major left-wing ideologies, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So the idea that he's coming out like, oh, man, like, I want some, I love business and stuff. It's so stupid. Like, it's so stupid.
I agree, and I think because he's really kind of framing a lot of that narrative on Blair's success. Like, there's no denying it. As much as you can say, like, you can't have a Labour Party leader that isn't like Blair now, that in order to be elected again. But I think that the fact he doesn't really seem to have like a unique selling point. He doesn't seem to have a niche, or even a niche in terms of reaching out to voters, like a particular demographic that he can really appeal to. I think Middle England, who are kind of their best hopes at securing some kind of a majority, is still like, I don't see a lot of people really kind of getting behind his campaign, it will probably just be a least worst option, kind of after what will have had 14 years by the next general election of a Conservative government, the last 5 years of which a pandemic-led kind of COVID government. I think, yeah, he needs to really kind of carve out some kind of niche where he has specific policies, whether that is something going back again to kind of free broadband or something, although obviously it wasn't popular with Corbyn. I think these kind of innovative policies that are very, very current for today and kind of have a place in 21st century society, rather than just like these kind of very vague narratives around some increases in tax, other kind of tax cuts for these businesses, because it's just so tried and tested, and I don't think it's going to kind of have the impact that it would need to have.
Yeah, I mean, we know, despite Jeremy Corbyn's failure, in elections, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was right for Starmer to kind of revert back to, like Tony Blair-esque policies, because ultimately that time is gone. It's a different time now. And as you say, he should have, stuck to his original promise, is to find like a middle between a Blair and a Corbyn, and try find that middle, be quite pro-Labour, but a bit more, sophisticated and in how his appearance and how he talks and his rhetoric, and I think he's kind of, he's straight to the more Tony Blair side of Labour and his politics, and I think it's not the time to do that, I think you do have to be bold and come up with, as you said, Rachel, more innovative policies that will capture the imagination of people. But yeah, it just seems like it's a revert back to the old politics, and it's looking like it's backfiring. This is the perfect time to take advantage of the situation. A few months, 1 or 2 months ago, I'd say that was the prime time to.
Yeah.
But now, yeah.
I'll say, just on a final note before we go to some NHS reforms, like, okay, from what I would say, just in terms of like media publicity, right? One of the biggest successes of Labour has been this whole free school meals situation, which, we can all agree was like, a good thing. But the idea that this whole free school meals thing came, a lot of the pressure on it on Boris Johnson came not from Keir Starmer, but from a football player, is also a bit telling about how ineffective he is really as a leader. And so, yeah, that's like the final thing I'll say on that. Yeah, Rachel, do you want to go on to some of the rumored NHS reforms?
Yeah, that sounds good. So this last week, we've seen a leaked document that Boris is planning a really quite dramatic overhaul of the NHS in the wake of COVID and its kind of like handling in the pandemic and kind of shortcomings there, but also tempered with a huge kind of surge in public admiration for the service, and kind of again highlighting it as like a critical service. Under these, of course, we need to kind of highlight are just at the moment reports, and they're not unconfirmed, but a lot of the kind of discussion is around NHS commissioners not being required to put contracts out to tender anymore with kind of competing health groups and private interest groups. They could just kind of have more centralised or decentralised control over individual NHS branches, rather than private companies coming in and kind of buying and taking these contracts and then obviously themselves trying to maximize their own profit margins. So I think it's quite interesting, especially because one of the kind of most cutting Labour critiques of the government at the last general election was that they would like sell the NHS off to America, basically. And I think, although obviously it didn't kind of ring true enough for enough people, it really kind of pervaded a lot of the narrative, and I think a lot of people were just incredibly skeptical of the Conservative government and the NHS. Especially these reforms were all brought under David Cameron, so I think it's quite legitimate, but it is interesting to see some kind of reversal of this. I think it makes a lot of political sense after all of these kind of publicity stunts of like clap for carers and things. If we saw only an increase in privatization and kind of then like stagnant wages and all of the things that we have seen already as a result of privatization within the sector, then it would just again highlight the kind of government's hypocrisy. So it makes political sense for them to do it, and also economically, if it is run well, like it has proved to kind of be very effectively managed, and a lot of the kind of mismanagement and like middlemen and bureaucracy that a lot of people do report as big issues within the healthcare service do come from outsourcing, and especially in terms of social care as well. It's kind of these quotas, these waiting times which are just never met, and then stocks and shares decrease because these quite unrealistic quotas set from people that are not in the business, that are not nurses and doctors kind of in the wards, they would not expect to have been met, but they're kind of implemented, and then as a result it's a bit of a kind of downward spiral. So I think overall it's very good if it's kind of kept in public ownership, of course, but it'll be interesting to see because, as I say, these have been unconfirmed reports.
Yeah, I definitely think it's quite a political move. Obviously, if it is the case that they reversed a lot of the reforms that was done with outsourcing, and that'd be great. But I do think, there was reason to believe that they were, gonna sell off some of and outsource a lot of the NHS, and the services to the US. But I do think, I think they've seen, with the response to the coronavirus and how the NHS has been so, effective, and there's a lot of public support right now for the NHS. It would look bad for them politically, selling off, some of the services.
It would be political suicide if they did that.
Exactly, yeah. That's why I do think it's more of a political than ideological reasoning, but it's good nonetheless. But yeah, I think, as we said also as well, health is one of the things that it is more effective to be kept as a public good. It's not something that you have to make profit on, because as you said, Rachel, a lot of the inefficiencies in the system are due to outsourcing. So yeah, I do think it does make sense, and hopefully they stick to this. Yeah, that's all I have to say really for that. I forgot what I was gonna say. I was gonna say something else, but it's fine. Go, Benji.
Yeah, no, I don't have much else to add apart from just agreeing with you guys.
I was gonna say.
Okay, go.
No, I think I think the key to maintain a good NHS is just to simply make sure it's adequately funded, and maybe you can, obviously, I think, as I said, keep it in the public in public ownership, but also you can maybe localize it more, try to get different NHSs to cater to their local needs, but still maintain it in the public sphere,
Sorry, just hate the button, but I think this is actually one of the goals of these new reforms, is to make it a more localized approach between NHS and the government to cater for constituents' needs, essentially. So that's just what I've read, because I don't know, all the reports that I've read seem very vague, but as Rachel said, it's not all confirmed yet, essentially. So we don't really have a clear-cut picture of exactly what's going to go down. But I think that's an aim, is to make it more localized and things. But again, I'm also, I don't know, I want to see what the final thing is. I'm always a bit skeptical with these things.
The devil's in the detail.
I'm sure there's some terms and conditions, I'm sure, in there which which have some benefit to the Tories. But I don't know, I'm just a little bit skeptical with the changes. But if the general idea of we get a more localized approach, it's run better, and it's more efficient, then for sure I'm down for that. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, I think I'll just say really quickly there. I read similar in, again, some of these unconfirmed reports. It's kind of nationally set centralized themes and agendas in terms of productivity and kind of better investment in social care, so we're not seeing as much kind of capacity needed on wards and things like that. But then I think exactly what you said, that will then be implemented more on a kind of like region by region, town by town basis. Especially just, even within some constituencies, obviously there are far higher kind of over 80 demographics present than in others. So there you'll need increases in like social funding and things like that, as opposed to perhaps cities where people are like older people are not maybe living within that urban hub, and they'll be more needed in other sectors. So I think certainly a kind of localized approach would be good. And it seems to be what these papers are suggesting. I'm kind of a little bit pessimistic in that they are just entirely leaked as well. I think it's kind of hearing what a few people are saying about these reforms and kind of just feeling a bit of the groundwork before, as you say, that devil will then need to be in the detail and they can like officially release them.
Yeah.
I was gonna. Can I add one more thing? Because I know, like, I think a lot of the Labour response. I heard, like, I see on the article some responses were that the Labour was coming at Conservatives for like questioning the timing of these reforms. But I just don't think the moralistic argument is effective, because it's just smart politics on the side of the Tories, because they know it's popular support, and they know if they publicize reforms to improve the NHS in some way, it's gonna have popular support, and it's just smart politics. The Labour just has to come with some policy goal to outmaneuver the Conservatives. Like, don't try like moralize it. Oh, like why are you only saying this now? Like, it's not gonna work. And it's just
like campaign for better wages or something like that. Don't be like, oh, don't make the NHS more efficient right now.
It's just.
But yeah,
It's a general
again, we
trend,
will
with Keir Starmer and this Labour Party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we will have to see though the final situation. Yeah. She goes to the railway situation. Oh, not railway. The HS2.
Yeah, I think so. Just this afternoon, we saw HS2 get the green light on the kind of next phase of development. Obviously, I think it's just becoming such an ongoing thing, and with each new kind of grouping and each new position that the project has to take, they're meeting more and more opposition and more kind of increase in funding that were not on target nor in budget. But yeah, the latest kind of phase of it this afternoon, as I say, has been officially allowed to go on. So it fits in quite well with more of a wider theme around kind of building back better, and this whole idea of having like a really, really strong kind of industrialized economy in the sense of travel. But I think it doesn't kind of fit as well with this like green new build back better, in terms of, I think we've discussed it briefly before, but a lot of the rail tracks and kind of route of this new project does run through a lot of kind of like nature and natural habitats and kind of reserves and things, and that's seen a lot of protests. Last week there was a sit-in protest where people like chained themselves to trees, which as part of the project would have to be cut down. So it's seeing a bit of backlash, but I think it's kind of too far in now to stop. And also, like, the government have just spent so much money on it already that it's realistically not going to stop. But yeah, I think there'll be a few more kind of bumps in the road before it's actually like a fully fledged service that people are using a lot. And also, just to add really quickly, the idea of kind of being able to get from like Birmingham to London in record times, filtered in with a narrative of people going to work and people being able to commute much, much faster, which of course the pandemic has thrown a massive spanner in the works. And the government have always been quite keen to keep narrative of like, well, if you can work from home, then do, but they really prefer people to be in the office if at all possible. So I think that that kind of goes against things with a lot of companies now finding out that people can actually really easily work from home and scaling back on kind of office premises and things. I'm not too sure how helpful that will be, but I think a strong rail network and link will always be of benefit, whether maybe quite as many people are using it for commuting purposes as was originally in the blueprints.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things where, I disagree with Extinction Rebellion. The groups like Extinction Rebellion protests and just HS2. I mean, for it to like stop the construction of it, I do think, I think the focus should be on the planning of the HS2 as opposed to just stopping it altogether, because we have to realize, mass transit and building an effective network of mass transit throughout the country is key to, to have a more green economy and more country in general, and along with, improving and, less pollution, it also, as you said, create jobs for people, hopefully stable and steady jobs. So I think the aim from the Extinction Rebellion should be making sure that the planning of this network is as green. It's like destroying less nature reserves as possible. Like minimizing as much damage as possible, as opposed to stopping it altogether. So I think what needs to be the focus. And alongside that, also I think there's a way for Extinction Rebellion and other left groups to also look at around like making sure that the jobs are union jobs or well-paid jobs. Also that looking at the ownership of the railway itself, the HS2, and that's I think those things you can target, and come at the construction, from the left. But I just think protesting this, stopping this altogether, is just it's not effective. Like because you need mass transit, and that's like the future for green energy and the green economy. So.
The idea that you think you're going to get something done by training yourself against a tree that's going to get cut down, I don't think is very politically serious, shall I say.
Extinction Rebellion, no strategy whatsoever. It's like...
Yeah. I mean, it's going to link into the... Sorry, wait, what are you going to say, Rachel?
I was just going to say really quickly, like it undermines that argument in doing something like this. Like try and get on radio and TV and highlight how like they're really, really important, but don't do stunts like this because like the vast majority of kind of like mainstream media did just laugh it off. Like on 5 Live, they were interviewing someone and they just kind of like the interview was not taking it seriously.
I mean, this is what annoys me with a lot of left-wing activist groups, I guess, is like...
I think we should say the Extinction Rebellion is not like they're not really... I mean, they're environmentalists, but they don't have much left politics. You can say they're not like they don't have much to say about like class dynamics and all that stuff. It's really much just environmentalist politics without any class analysis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was gonna build into that. I mean, basically, like the idea that, well, first of all, like the idea of climate and class and things, especially with regards to like impact, on is like they're connected to each other. And so like if Extinction Rebellion wanted to get serious, they would have done things or like advocated for things like Simon was saying, which would have allowed for a greener solution to a lot of the controversies with regards to the HS2, but at the same time would be focusing on greater class dynamics in society and things like as Simon said, by doing like unionized jobs. But I say like more generally, I guess we'll get onto this when we do the BLM and Extinction Rebellion thing. But like, I think, a lot of these, I think it's very easy for media and stuff to laugh off, someone like a movement like Extinction Rebellion if they're not really coming at it in like from a serious point. Like it's so easy to be like, look at these loons, being like tied up against a tree. Like that's not a serious protest, And like we need a climate movement and we need like an organized effort with it. And I just don't know if serious proposals and stuff being put in place, because it's just, at least for myself, not enough right now. And it's like, and the idea that Extinction Rebellion is probably one of the most known climate activist groups, up there, that like that's horrendous, because like a lot of their stuff, like the idea as well, also a couple of years ago I think was they like stood on top of the trains at and like the London Tube, right? And it's like, look, like
Oh,
that's
yeah.
also so stupid. Like all you're doing is getting negative press for yourself. If you want to have a conversation about, oh, build it, like changing out, I don't know, are the tubes aren't electric?
I was
Are
gonna
they?
say that even if they're not electric, they're still one of the most environmentally friendly ways of travel. Like I
Yeah,
don't and like and these
exactly.
people that they were targeting it was in Cannon Town, which is like a working class neighborhood that's not like well off. People have to get to work through like the tube. Like and you just stopping them from going to work. Like you just isolating yourself from popular supports by doing that stuff.
Yeah, like focus on actual things. Like advocate, like for cars, for example, advocate for like more a subsidy or something on like green vehicles or electric vehicles or whatever. Don't like be standing on a tube, right? Like that's it's not really on top of the tube. It's not really a serious idea. But yeah, so do you guys have anything else to add on this, or do you want to go to the Telegraph article?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rachel. Okay, Sad, you want to take that one away?
Yeah, I guess I could do that. So there was an article published by the Telegraph, and it was basically stating how they want an inquiry into the far left hijacking of groups like Black Lives Matter and Extinction Rebellion. Um, yeah, and this inquiry wants to be led by John Woodcock, which is he's now known as what is it, Lord Walney. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he himself has been in recent scandals with like sexual assault and all that stuff. So that's the person who wants to inquire into these extremist groups. So yeah, I think it was funny. I mean, also to be clear, he also wants to look into far right groups. So it's not only just looking into far left, but yeah, it's just
Well, when you read the article, like at first it does seem like they're trying to draw an equivalence between like the far right like groups and like the far left groups. But to be fair, in the article they did clarify that they're not trying to draw a
yeah,
parallel. But yeah, just like it was like the tone of the article was I felt it was like
yeah.
that.
I just think, I mean, maybe they didn't intend to do this, but there is a lot. I think it's quite common that there's like an equivalent, like they're trying to create an equivalency between the far left and the far right. Like, how can you compare like far right groups, in comparison to like BLM? Like, the priorities
Yeah.
are completely different. The actions are completely different. Like, like BLM is not shooting politicians like what happened with like Joe Cox, for example, a few years back. They're not doing stuff like this, and their motivations are completely different. So this is a kind of false equivalency that they're trying to bring into the mainstream, and you can also see that with like because like they're criticizing BLM or whatever for having anti-capitalist views, and it's the same with a few months ago when they want to ban anti-capitalist teachings within school. And it's crazy. Like, yeah, it's just a false equivalency, and it's kind of dangerous. If this was any other country, like we would be like, human rights, like human rights violations. Like that's what we'll be doing. And it's just like I think I don't know what's the motivation. I guess like they want to kind of shut off any like deep analysis of a capitalist society and Britain's history with it. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'll go to you in a second, Rachel. But like the idea that BLM, I think, has been like labeled as a far left, I guess movement is just like unreal to me. I mean, obviously, people like to get a little smart about it and be like, oh no, I'm opposed to the organization, not the movement, and all this stuff. But like the reality is that a lot of it. I mean, when you think about BLM, it's like I think they're quite tied together in some sense, and the solutions to um, some of the problems are linked to things like certain anti-capitalist thoughts and ideas. Like the whole concept. Like I don't know why people find it surprising that BLM is anti-capitalist. Like if you're under the impression that a lot of your problems are caused by capitalism, well then yeah, you're going to be anti-capitalist, and that's just like normal if you actually listen to some of the what their demands are and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. just really to echo kind of what you both said there in terms of like, as much as the article kind of tries to highlight that it's like critiquing both left and right organizations, there's just such a huge kind of dichotomy between the two, and the principles and kind of ethos and ethics of what those organizations are fighting for. So I think it's very difficult to categorize them all the same, but a lot of people, like, as much as you kind of want to, like, if someone were to critique a far right movement, then I feel like it's almost second nature for people to say, oh well, look, there's like bad parts of BLM and things as well, but in kind of actuality it's really not that true.
To be, sorry, Sad. To be fair, the article as well also brings up like the idea of violence on both sides and things like that. Like, as in, yes, I don't think anyone actually who is genuinely actually believes in BLM and stuff like that is gonna be like, yo, I'm alright with violence going on. Like, obviously, that's not the idea of the whole movement. And you see this playbook as well being used with the civil rights movement. Like, people were focusing on violence of the civil rights movement and stuff like that in certain areas. But, you know, in reality, look, like, it was a great thing that the civil rights movement happened, right? And we look back on it as a really huge time for progress, I guess, in loads of ways. And so, like, this fixation on literally the fringes of the BLM movement is just annoying. It's like so annoying.
I mean, it's interesting because, like, you know, if you look at throughout history, like, yeah, as you said, the civil rights movements, even, you know, apartheid, the ANC, like, a lot of the excuses was, you know, calling these people, like, these leaders, communists, you know, like, so you don't mix it in mix it in your school because that's communism. And it's like throughout history, like, these tactics have been used to try to scare off people in dealing with certain issues like race, you know. So I mean, even though, I mean, obviously, like, Martin Luther King and Mandela and a lot of people in the ANC, they were either communists or socialists. That is true, but it is used as like a fear tactic to you know, to like stop solidarity between races, I think. But yeah, I mean, regarding BLM, I think it is true. I think some of the founders do have links with like Marxism and socialism, but as you said, Benji, I think it makes sense, you know, because the history of, you know, for example, like transatlantic slavery, that was, you know, it was basically for capitalism. It was to, you know, build the profits of slave labor to enrich the United States, you know. Same with colonialism, you know. It's just exploitation to build your wealth as a country. So
Trying to expand markets. Yeah.
And even nowadays, like, oftentimes, it's a demonization of like black people or immigrants to, like, you know, to, as I said, just to like to kind of divide the working class, you know, and kind of separating their interests, you know, when in reality they have very, like, their wants and needs are very similar, you know. So I think it's normal to have more socialistic thoughts if you know, part of BLM, and if you analyze the history of black people in relation to the West, you know, I don't think it's a crazy thought to have. But also with the Extinction Rebellion, I think connecting them to the left, any type of socialist organ, like, I think that's crazy because, like, I mean, there's nothing like left wing about it. As I said before, I think it's just very environmentally focused. They even disavowed socialism a few months ago. I remember they said, "Oh, we're not a socialist organization." So, yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's just to you know, just to like isolate the like left wing socialist policies, and, you know, just to demonize it as they did with Corbyn, you know, and how he was treated by the media a lot of the time. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I'll say, Rachel, do you have anything else to add before I speak? I just think in general, like, what these tactics really are, Saz, what you're trying to say is, like, it's a divide and conquer strategy, right? It's like if you can fragment all these different sectors of society enough, then they can't unify, they won't unify, and really try come and, you know, protest for big changes. Like, you see this as well in terms of like, well, at least I know in, like, India, for example, with the British Empire, like, a lot a lot of the playbook used there was an idea of like divide and conquer, and like setting different groups of people against each other and things like that for their own personal gain. And I mean, I'm not obviously saying that like a divide and conquer rule, how it worked in colonialism, is the same as right now. But like that tactic is also what I think you can see with a lot of different like news outlets these days. Like the hyperfixation on like one working class family, for example, stealing benefits, or like a certain fringe BLM protester who committed violence. Like that whole concept is for people to just feel negatively towards that group, and not and so that they can band together and actually really form something like that can result in real substantive changes for people's lives. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree.
Okay. So shall we go to Grenfell?
Yeah. So just this last week, there's been kind of continued hearings. Obviously, we're a huge kind of way down the line after that initial tragedy, and the loss of life. Just under 100 people lost their lives. And we're still seeing kind of continued reports, very, very expensive inquiries, and I'm not really sure the impact that they're having in terms of a lot of those residents are still in temporary accommodation even now. And it's kind of perhaps a mischanneling of where that money really ought to go. This being said, like official kind of findings do need to be found so that these mistakes aren't repeated again. But I think a lot of them have already been found in terms of the fact that it was that flammable cladding that was so pivotal in causing it, and the fact that this similar and the same flammable cladding is still on tower and apartment blocks up and down the country and isn't being removed today, I think is kind of just failing to heed those lessons. The hearing and inquiry this past week, though, I think one of the main issues it's centered around is the fact that these other tower and apartment blocks with this cladding, residents are actually being asked to foot the bill for kind of 24/7 surveillance, which literally means two people like walking up and down each floor and just seeing if they see any smoke. The idea being that if they do, they are going to somehow knock on every single door quicker than what would have happened if someone noticed it and then called the fire service. And obviously these people's wages need to be very high, shifts and things of that nature, but it should not come down to the residents to pay for this. Similarly, the removal of such cladding when kind of construction companies have like align their beliefs to this, and they're quote unquote happy to like remove the cladding and kind of put a safer alternative in. Well, of course you ask the questions why it hasn't just been there in the first place. But similarly, with all of these kind of debates being had, it is coming down to residents. One at one of the hearings was highlighting how she got a £10,000 bill, which is just a fraction of what some people have got, to like rescale the building that she's living in. She has a mortgage and she just can't sell her apartment now because no one will buy it. So it's very, very troubling to kind of hear some of those live reports and hearings, and that being matched with people in the industry kind of highlighting the fact that they were aware how flammable this was, and the kind of appropriate steps weren't being taken. Took something of this nature to kind of give a wake-up call. But I mean, is that even really kind of loud enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this whole situation, I think it's just kind of shameful how they kind of placing a lot of the burden on the actual tenants and people who lived in these places and people who've they've had to move out. I think I just think that I mean, we've said it before, but I just think this complete lack of accountability for the companies who installed the cladding, who planned the housing. There seems to be no punishment, no accountability for who's responsible for it, and just shifting the cost and burden onto the people involved who live there. I think it's just It's shameful. I mean, yeah, I mean, not much else to say, really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with both of you guys. But I was just thinking about like the other day I walked past like Grenfell essentially, and I was just like trying to put myself in like the shoes of the people who were in that building that night, and it was like it would be it's so insanely horrible that like people had to go through this, and the survivors of the whole situation are some of them are still in temporary housing, for example. It's like that's really not like how you treat a very preventable problem. And that was Grenfell. And so yeah, all in all a crazy story, and I can't believe, as Samuel said, that some of these people and companies and stuff have not been held accountable as of yet. So I guess that wraps up our domestic session, unless anybody else wants to add anything.
That's good. I'm good.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, cool. So we can go to more international vibes. I start off with the what I found personally hilarious, the GameStop fiasco, which happened. Sal, are you introducing that one?
Yeah, I can go into it.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I think we wanted to break down the recent drama with GameStop, and because it's such a big, last week it dominated the news, and it's just such a indicative story about the current system of financialization in the world, So yeah, I'm gonna start with okay. So there's a few players within this story. The main players are GameStop, Reddit, and Robinhood. So I'm gonna be starting with GameStop. So GameStop is basically a brick and mortar shop that sells electronics, particularly around more gaming. And GameStop hasn't been doing too well, and they've been a victim of something called short selling on the stock market, and this has been particularly done by hedge funds. And so, just to give you a breakdown of what short selling is, it's essentially when an investor borrows a stock, sells the stock, and then buys the stock back to return it to the lender. Short sellers are basically betting that the stock will fall, and they will sell it with a drop in price. Sorry, yeah. And this kind of has a knock-on effect, and doing the short selling continuously drove the price down for GameStop. This is where Reddit comes in, and as you know, Reddit is a social news page where you're able to talk and discuss with other users. There's a forum on Reddit called Wall Street Bets, and this is basically a forum of retail investors and traders that deal with lower level stocks. And they noticed, that hedge funds, what are they doing with the short selling and driving the price down? And I think it was kind of they want to get revenge on the hedge funds' actions, and they kind of wanted to shake things up, shall we say? And so the people on this forum decided to buy a bunch of stocks on GameStop, and they shot the price up, and they rose the share price to very high levels. And this meant that the hedge funds lost a lot of money on the short selling. So there was a huge reaction in the aftermath. So, for example, a hedge fund such as Malvern Capital, they sustained a 53% loss during the whole debacle. Robinhood, which is an app which does commission-free investing, which allows more like a democratic way to participate in the stock market, where a lot of the Reddit people invested in the stock, they closed down their app and didn't allow people to continue betting on the stock market and buying up more stocks. So they shut it down. And I think this situation kind of exposed a few things. I think first that the rules are not really the same for everyone. Capitalists and investors, I think they like to claim that it is a risk. The stock market is a risk, and there's winners and losers, and you have to accept the potential consequences that comes with it. But when it comes to when the hedge funds and the big investors end up losing, they panic and they end up, putting political pressure to change laws and to, such as Robinhood, closing down the app. So they use their power to once again shift the rules in their favor. And I think it exposes us, it kind of exposes the farce of democracy within capitalism as a whole. And I think it also just, as I said, points out the madness of finance and its role in the economy. And I think it kind of, kind of illustrates when Marx was talking about, fictitious capital. And this shows the danger of it's basically like investing and grabbing money on what you perceive will be the future value of the company. And that just shows how dangerous it is to have key necessities of society dependent on what you perceive to be the future value of something, And it just creates to be a completely illogical system, But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it was very fun, it was a very fun thing that we saw. And it's nice to see, the little guy, having one over with the hedge funds. I do think it's not some revolutionary act, because at the end of the day, Robinhood, for example, like the fact that many more users logged onto there, that a lot of stock hedge funds and companies have investments through Robinhood, so they ended up enriching themselves in that way. And I think you fight capitalism with more capitalism, because it's going to lead to the same crises and contradictions, And I just like the story because it's like a fun story, but it's not going to end. I don't think it'll have a lot of significant effects besides just highlighting the hypocrisy in the system,
Yeah, also, it must be said that Robinhood, they stopped trading of the GameStop stock. Like, I think when it was really gaining momentum, like, obviously it gained loads of momentum, but they stopped it at a certain point of the day. And yeah, as Samuel says, that could go, that could trace back as well to the idea of these hedge funds, having ties to GameStop overall. But yeah, again, I agree. Like, I saw my favorite person of all time, Tim Pool, trying to frame this as like a working class victory over like the elite. But I think that I don't think it's like that in the sense. I think it's, as Samuel said, a fun story, and people did people like working class people did make money from this, definitely, if they invested. But it's not like like if you're like if you're on like a left wing kind of perspective or like point of view, then you're not going to see this and be like, oh, sick, like we don't need the revolution anymore or something like that, like this is not one of those stories. So yeah, Rachel, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of to echo what you both said, I think as well, why it is quite dangerous to have this like typical narrative, this kind of like working class victory as well, is that a lot of people that aren't experienced in the stock market kind of saw what was happening and also tried to do the same, and like they lost a lot of money. It wasn't just these kind of huge hedge fund companies, because ultimately at the end of the day they have years of experience in kind of handling of such crises, although we haven't maybe seen one of this nature before. A lot better kind of damage control and management of such. So I'm quite kind of restrained to paint it in that way, but I think it's very, very interesting, even just as a statement. Like some of the kind of like more mematic features that have been like circulating on Twitter and things about like teenage guys in their bedroom kind of saying like, "Mom, give me £100 to go and crash the economy." It almost does ring quite true in terms of like the wake up call that I think it's given, as you say, a lot of these hedge funds and things, but ultimately I think it may just kind of cause people to buckle down even more now. So I can't necessarily see it being repeated, although a lot of people are already trying to like plan the next GameStop.
Yeah, also like the concept of shorting a stock is like it's so messed up.
Yeah.
It's like it's of course, if you have all these hedge funds ganging up on this one company being like, you're gonna fail, it's not like this company is gonna just magically, apart from the situation, it's gonna magically gain like loads of popularity, right? That's just not gonna happen. Like there was a lot of crying out about market manipulation and all this stuff, and like all these people ganging up on this on these $1 billion hedge funds. But like no, like the reality is the idea of hedge funds banding together to short this stock is like, it's that's really pretty messed up, because that's like, yeah, my business is probably going to fail. And
it's just market manipulation from the wrong people. I mean, this happens all the time, but it's just the fact that it's these outsiders, small guys who are manipulating. Now it's an issue. When it's one form or another, it's been going on since the inception of like the financialization of the economy. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I do think like what are you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say it's really like irrelevant point, but it was funny because I saw like circulating on like Instagram and Twitter and stuff that like Marx himself dabbled in the stock market back in the day, and so like it was just funny to see like I don't know, it was like funny to see like his thoughts on it and things like that. But yeah, anyway, it's a really irrelevant point. Yeah, what are you gonna
No,
say?
I was gonna say yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, I think what it does is just make a different type of shareholder, a different type of owner richer. It's not changing the system by any means. It's just shifting like the money to another owner, another stakeholder. It doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't challenge like class dynamics between owners and workers. So it's like, yeah, it's not doing much to change the system. Yeah, it's just changing. It's just shifting who's benefiting from it, really. So yeah, it was funny though. I mean, obviously I can't lie and say it wasn't entertaining me. It was. So
Yeah, I found it really funny on Twitter, to be honest. But yeah, should we? I mean, anything else on that one?
No.
No. So some Joe Biden updates. I guess we're going to speak a little bit about foreign policy more generally. Just from my side, I guess I know that. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the whole thing with Afghanistan, he's been saying he wants to potentially. In the past, he said he wanted to get out of Afghanistan. Like I saw a tweet circulating saying in 2014, saying, "Oh no, was it 20? No, it must have been 2012, saying that we're gonna get out of Afghanistan, all this kind of stuff." Obviously, that hasn't happened, and I don't know if there's been developments on this. From what I've last read, though, it doesn't seem like he's gonna be taking that route. Um, and even if he does, though, I think I've seen some reports like maybe like it has been spoken about, but I think there's a lot of external pressure, I guess, from the military-industrial complex who want him to stay there because of profits, essentially. But yeah, that's all I know with Afghanistan. And then I think Samuel, Rachel, either of you or one of you going to speak about Iran and Saudi Arabia.
yeah, I mean, I can go over them. So yeah, so we can start off with Iran, I guess. So I think there's a lot of hope when Biden initially came into power, that we hoped that they would rejoin the Iran deal and carry on what they did before in the Obama era, to try create a deal and prevent Iran from building nuclear arms. But that hope is kind of diminishing. I think it's not looking good right now, because I mean, in a recent interview, Biden stated that he will only start negotiating once Iran, they sorry, they stop with the uranium production and carrying on with that. So once they do that, then he'll start negotiating with Iran. But Iran said that they're not willing to stop with the uranium production, and so it seems like the negotiations are stalled. But from my point of view, I mean, so we create this deal with Iran, they follow it to a T. They do whatever the deal says they must do. But now Iran, Trump came in and he completely destroyed that deal. So now we're going back to them like, we know we messed it up for you guys because you're following it perfectly, but now you have to compromise for us and stop with whatever you're doing with uranium, so we can get back to negotiating again without any guarantee, no guaranteed safety in the future. So I just think the U.S., if anything, they should be begging Iran to get back in the deal and do what it takes to do that again. Why must Iran now suddenly just do whatever the U.S. says they must do? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I mean, hopefully, obviously, Biden has a record of supporting U.S. imperialism around the world, and it seems like there's still carrying this attitude that every country has to bow down to whatever they request, in order to start negotiating. But I think Iran's well in their rights to be cautious, and I think, as I said, I think the U.S. should be begging Iran to get back in the deal, but they're just being a bit arrogant in how they're dealing with it, I think.
Also considering his Secretary of State's comments being like, "Oh no, Iran might have nuclear weapons." Like, it's like, yeah, you know what would stop them having nuclear weapons? Then maybe you should get back into that deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Again, just like echoing what you said there, I think that's a really good summary of it, because it's not getting, like, obviously it's kind of gaining traction within the US, like it's this ongoing theme, but it's just kind of like speaking to friends and people at university, it's not like the biggest thing kind of associated with the Biden administration and things perhaps in the minds of many at the moment, but obviously it's super important. So yeah, just to echo what you both said with that one.
Yeah, I mean, also before we get to Saudi and whole that whole situation, I also want to add, like, also they refused to lessen the sanctions imposed on Iran before negotiations, which is also was something that Iran wanted, which again I think is just it's common sense. It's like, Iran, why would you negotiate with no guarantees of lifting sanctions? Like, it's just a basic request, and I don't know why Biden is trying to play hardball with this situation. Like, obviously it's like for the betterment of the safety of the region if they do this deal, and it's just stalling on it, and yeah, it's just ridiculous. But if it's all right with you guys, should we get into Saudi and Yemen conflict, which I think we have to give Biden some credit for. So yeah, Biden announced that he, along with stopping arms sales to Saudi or temporarily banning it, he's also withdrawing their military support for the Saudi and Yemen war, which is great news, honestly. Like, when we reported on the news about the temporary ban of arms sales, I was very skeptical that he was going to withdraw support completely, altogether. But it seems like he has, and yeah, I mean, obviously, it's credit to that. So yeah, I think that's great news on that front, and not much else to say besides that. It's good news. Hopefully, like, moving forward, we continuously disassociate themselves with Saudi Arabia, because it's not only Yemen that they allies with Saudi, and there's other various issues throughout the region where they are in coalition with Saudi Arabia. So hopefully they wean back their support on all fronts when it comes to Saudi Arabia, and also to say hopefully the UK follows suit as well, because if the US can do it, surely like
the UK can.
The UK, I mean, yeah, I would think hopefully that it happens, but we'll see what Boris Johnson does on that front.
They've put quite a lot of pressure on the UK, I think. Like, apparently there's been kind of quite a lot of like diplomatic talks, just like really highlighting the need to follow suit, especially if the UK, as kind of Boris is hoping to get any kind of trade deal and things. This is kind of bread and butter issues that they're going to expect kind of support and like mirroring with. So I think it is probably expected that it'll come soon, but Johnson likes to claim to set kind of some of his own foreign policy. But yeah, again, just really, Samuel, echoing what you said with that.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. Yeah, I mean, just like in terms of reactions, just from the online left, I saw a lot of reactions of people being like, yeah, like, but we didn't have to be in Yemen in the first place and stuff, and like this wouldn't have to be a big deal. Like, this all started under Joe Biden and Obama anyway, I believe. So like, but the whole, like, I mean, yes, that is also true, but at the same time, you can also celebrate the fact that they're getting out of it. It doesn't have to be like a binary thing where it's like where you just are like, I don't know if that made any sense. But do you guys get what you mean?
Yeah, but trying to put the blame
on
Democrats and Republicans for who started what war is a bit stupid, because both of them get into wars. It's like they both have very similar foreign policy goals, so it's kind of just be happy that that they did it. Like,
yeah, I agree with that one for sure.
You're not gonna get mad at Republicans if they suddenly advocate to leave Iraq, or
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Yeah. Anything else or no?
That's good.
No, I think that's it.
Okay, cool. So thank you for tuning in for the 7th episode. Like, subscribe, comment. We always love those. And yeah, just we'll see you guys all very soon. And yeah, thank you, Samuel, Rachel, and everyone who listened. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.